Over the past 10 years, human trafficking has grown exponentially. It's in our country,
our cities,
our homes.
Today, millions of children are trapped in modern-day slavery. Can it end? We've done it before.
History has shown that when enough dedicated people rally together, change is inevitable. All it can take is 10 minutes,
10 letters,
$10,
10 people telling others about the horrors of this industry. Human trafficking is the human rights issue of our time.
But it doesn't have to be.
Let's end it.
Welcome to Zoe International's Hope in Action livestream. I'm Esther Yu, Zoe's Western Regional Director. For those hearing about Zoe for the first time, our mission is to reach every person with God's love and rescue every child from human trafficking. And we accomplish this mission with operations in Thailand, Mexico, Japan, Australia, and in the United States, both in LA County and in Pennsylvania. We're committed to reaching every person with the gospel through missions, evangelism, leadership, and discipleship, and ending child trafficking in our lifetime through prevention, rescue, and restoration. Today, we have a special guest, retired Sergeant Jeff Walker from Los Angeles' Sheriff's Department, who Zoe worked closely with while he led the LA Regional Human Trafficking Task Force. We're excited to talk to him to learn about the law enforcement's role in assisting with human trafficking cases, and even to discuss how recent changes in California laws impact the law enforcement's work. So welcome, retired Sergeant Jeff Walker. Hi, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. We just so appreciate all the work you've done for as long as you have, and just the dedicated support that we personally have had with the kids that we've worked with, and just with our staff. You've always been available to answer every call and help us if you couldn't help us, you always went out of your way to help us find somebody who could. So we just appreciate you so much. And we just celebrate you with your retirement as well. I know you're still involved in this work. But if you would be able to share with us about your law enforcement background and your experience in this field of human trafficking.
I started the Sheriff's Department in 1988, so that was long before many of you were born. I retired after 35 years. My assignments included patrol at Lakewood Station, and then at child abuse at the Special Victims Bureau. Then I promoted, became a sergeant, went to Temple Station, and then went to Men's Central Jail there. And then I got transferred to Vice, and that's where I got exposed to the human trafficking angle of law enforcement, because we had kind of the collateral on human trafficking, collateral responsibility. So we worked with Homeland Security a lot on our trafficking cases, and it wasn't until Jim McDonnell got elected in 2014, that's when the task force came into fruition in 2015. And you know what they say about real estate is location, location, location. I happened to be in the right place at the right time, where in Vice, when they folded Vice into human trafficking, and from there we became the largest co-located human trafficking task force in the country. And they're still going strong. Even we took a hit during COVID, but the numbers are slowly climbing back up, and they're still active even now. They're still doing their thing. We have 2 trafficking teams that cover the whole county, and we also have what they call the SAFE team, which is the Sexual Assault Felony Enforcement Team. They're the Internet Crimes Against Children team. We have the ICAC team and human trafficking all under one roof, so it makes things super efficient.
That's amazing. And you've seen so much in all the years that you've done this work. What do you think is important for the public to know about human trafficking?
I think the public is still under the impression that it happens somewhere else and it happens overseas. And certainly Zoe has seen a lot of it overseas, but I think people are kind of flabbergasted when they find out it's happening on our very own streets. It's happening in our towns. When you give them the definition of what human trafficking is, they go, "Oh, I've been singing the lyrics to those songs, and I didn't realize that that's what's that kind of publicity is affecting our girls and our boys in our communities." Human trafficking exists even if you don't have a track or a blade in your town. It's happening in your hotels, especially if those hotels happen to be near a main thoroughfare or a freeway. I've seen it happen in suburban towns. I've seen it happen in rural suburban cities. It happens anywhere. It happens anywhere where money can be made. And as you know, money knows no jurisdictional bounds. So it's going to be happening in all towns, all cities.
And I know one of the questions, because we talk with parents that call us on our hotline, or other community members like school teachers, social workers, or even churches that call us, and everybody's assumption is, I know this thing is happening right here, or I know this girl or this family is being impacted, and they just assume that law enforcement is just going to come and arrest them. When law enforcement does receive a tip or a report about possible human trafficking, what are the next steps? What happens from there?
Well, it's important to note that just because you report human trafficking doesn't mean there's going to be an arrest. There's got to be an investigation first. And just to take a step back and talk about criminal law 101. Generally, whenever for what they call the corpus of the body of the crime, there has to be the elements of the crime present. The elements of the crime are that the victim, usually a person, the victim has to give you the first steps. Okay, usually has to tell you that a crime occurred. So, like if you got your car stolen, you tell a police officer that your car is stolen. That meets that threshold right there, that your car was stolen. So likewise, with these victims, they have to say that they were trafficked. Okay. Now, we all know that the problem with that is that many times they don't say that. They don't self-report. And even if they are confronted by law enforcement, they may not say it. So automatically, that's our first hurdle, is that we don't have a victim that's willing to cooperate. So we have to work these cases victim-centered, not victim-built. So in other words, we have to build the case. Without the victim. These are tough because what these cases lack in victims, oftentimes we make up for in electronic evidence. Okay, but when it comes to court, Sixth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says that people who are accused of crimes have a right to confront their accusers. It's hard for a defense attorney to confront a text, or to confront or to cross-examine a text, or to cross-examine a cell phone. So you have to have a lot of evidence to put on a case without a victim. It can be done, to be sure, but it takes a lot of time, a lot of search warrants, a lot of that kind of stuff. So if they report it, they're not going to necessarily see an arrest. That doesn't mean an investigation is not taking place. That doesn't mean that an arrest may not take place down the road. A lot of times these victims may testify against their traffickers. They just need time. And that's where Zoe comes in. Organizations like that can help these victims process this kind of stuff, because in court, like I mentioned, they have a right to confront their accuser, which means that victim has to sit in court in front of their trafficker and testify in open court in front of them. So that can be very daunting for these victims, but it can be done. They just need help and they need support. But in many other countries, they don't afford criminal defendants those kind of rights. So you can testify in private behind closed doors, and it can be held against a bad guy. In the U.S., it all has to be done in open court in front of the bad guy. The victims know that, and it's tough for them to do that, but it can be done. But it takes time. And certainly, if we make an arrest, you have 48 hours to get it to the district attorney's office for filing. These victims are not going to be ready in 48 hours. It may take some time.
Yeah, that's really helpful information to know. And these are the behind the scenes pieces that I think the public often is unaware of. And what evidence is important for victims to keep and share with police?
Uh, just know that we are interested in electronics. So if anybody watching happens to be working for an organization that works with these victims, the police are going to want all electronics. Okay. And sometimes the way Zoe is really nice with us is they know that we're going to want the cell phone, so they'll have another cell phone ready to go. So when we as law enforcement take that cell phone, that's sometimes where we run into the biggest problems, is they obviously have a very strong reaction to having their cell phone taken away from them. So Zoe will come in with, boop, another cell phone, here you go, and then that calms things down. Because we need the cell phones, we need the tablets, we need the social media, we need all of that, because when we interview these victims, we already largely presume that they're going to be unavailable over the next week, months, etc. But that cell phone evidence stays forever. So we need that evidence, in addition to license plates and all that kind of stuff, license plate numbers, things like that.
And as I said, you've been such a great support for the Zoe team whenever it comes to trying to find any way to help keep the kids safe in our care. And in fact, you helped us with our very first child living in our home, who was just 13 years old. And the exploiters were coming to our home repeatedly. They were luring her out with drugs while she struggled with her drug addiction. And then you helped us start with getting some minimal charges on the record related to contributing to the delinquency of a minor. And then eventually over time, by collaborating with the LA Regional Human Trafficking Task Force, including sheriffs, LAPD, FBI, DCFS, the perpetrators did end up getting found to be exploiting several kids. And then just this year, after many years later, 2 individuals pled guilty and were found guilty and then sentenced to 15 or more years. And for me, this case personally reminded me that it takes a long time to build a case and then prosecute it. And that a lot of times, unfortunately, justice is often not found for years. But what I've been telling parents who call me sometimes is just how important it is to continue to make those missing child reports, to make those reports against perpetrators with any crime that they commit against the child or the family, and just not to give up. Would you be able to comment on this whole process and how long it can take, and even sometimes using other charges, maybe not trafficking, because you've really been instrumental in helping us really figure out some successful solutions?
Yeah, I remember just being so frustrated that traffickers could just show up to your facility and just almost like you're picking your kid up from school. They would just literally be so bold as to drive in, honk the horn, and she'd come out with a couple of Zoe staff next to her pleading not to go, and she would just hop in the car, and I'm like, this can't be right. This cannot be right. We worked, like you said, we worked it out to let the deputies know, because the deputies probably didn't realize that that was actually a crime. They were just going over there taking missing person reports, which are non-criminal, and they're like, oh, another missing report. But once it's a crime, potentially a felony, oh, okay, that's why they're there. They want to do crime stuff. Doing missing person report, non-criminal stuff is like, but when you give them a crime they can follow up on, they perk on to do. So I didn't realize when you sent me this synopsis of it, I didn't realize it'd been so long, and it took so long. But there can be many explanations for that. A lot of these times, these cases get continued. They sometimes the suspect gets out and then he goes on warrant status. He doesn't come back to court. Sometimes we can't locate the victims. Sometimes it does take time to get social media warrant information back from social media. We're not a big priority for them, so it may take a month to get something back to Facebook and from Instagram, things like that. So there's a lot of times these are built. A lot of times there are days that are built. Eventually, justice does come.
Yeah, and we did have the privilege of supporting that particular youth through that trial. She was so amazing, even at her young age, just withstanding hours of having to go through testimony and testifying, and she just did such an amazing job. And we're so thankful for all the victim support and the FBI on that case, and the sheriffs and everybody who were involved in just being able to help her get to the other side of it. And now she's doing well and safe, thank God. And so we're just thankful for the collaboration that it takes, and so much resource that's required to be able to, help these kids and families get to the other side of it. Recently, Assembly Bill 379 just passed the Senate Appropriations Committee, and it's looking good to progress and pass into law.
In a unanimous vote, the California Assembly approved the latest push to protect child sex trafficking victims who are 16 and 17 years old.
All those vote who desire to vote.
The bill, AB 379, makes it easier for prosecutors to charge a felony against older adults who buy the teens for sex.
It showed a kind of a knot on the side of her head with a gash on it.
Sacramento Democratic Assembly member Maggie Krell originally wrote this proposed law.
And then she said that was from a trick. That's slang for a buyer.
The bill, based on her decades investigating the crime and as a former prosecutor for the California Department of Justice, she has noted nearly 60% of child sex trafficking victims are 16 and 17 years old. The buyer she described faced zero consequences.
That moment haunted me. The way that she felt so disposable, the way that she didn't feel like a victim, the way that we had failed to address the full magnitude of what she had faced.
So this would make it a felony to purchase a 16 and 17-year-old for sex. And then it also reinstates making it a crime for loitering to solicit sex. So AB 379, it's focused on the buyer, where, in the past, a lot of times it was focused on the trafficker. Can you comment on how, even the buyer aspect? I know you guys do operations sometimes targeting buyers, but how do laws like these help law enforcement to be able to build cases against the buyer and even sometimes even the trafficker?
Well, us in the task force are kind of locked in between two worlds here, okay? There's supply, there's demand, and there's traffickers. So that's the triangle, okay? So we're trying not to mess much with the supply. We don't really want to mess with those girls because even the adults, they're victims. So we really don't want to mess with them. We want to mess with the traffickers. We really want to mess with the buyers, and that requires undercover operations. And we know that a lot of them buy sex from juveniles, whether they know it or not. They are, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of them know it, especially if it's cyber-based, if it's hotel-based. They know what they're getting. Supply, demand, and traffickers is the components, are all components to the problem. So if we can try to knock one of those legs out, then it becomes harder for this to manifest itself and to exist.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for breaking that down for us. What do you usually train? I know you do trainings for law enforcement. Over the years, especially the way that you engage our organization and even the kids that we work with, what do you train law enforcement in terms of so that they can have tools for the best success for the investigations that they're doing, or the cases that they're trying to build? What are the general things that you're advising them as somebody who's been experienced in this for so long?
I advise the law enforcement officers to lead with evidence. Chances are, since they're in uniform and they're driving, marked police cars, the victims are probably not going to be very warm to them. That's the way it is. I make sure the deputies know that it's not personal. They've been trained to hate you, and they've been trained to distrust you. Maybe not hate, but just at least distrust. And that is born by some personal experience. I mean, a lot of times these girls are, they felt they've been let down by everybody in their life: family, probation officers, cops, social workers. In their mind, they've been let down by everybody. So another cop showing up is like another in a series of people who are just going to let me down. Also, the trafficker has told her that if you ever, the cops are there just to get me, and if you cooperate with them, I'm going to kill you, that kind of stuff. So I have to explain to the officers and to the deputies that it's not personal. This is just the way it is. They're going to return to their trafficker. That's just baked in. That's how it is. Okay. However, you have to be ready for that time when she doesn't want to return. And that may be when she goes back to him 4 times, 5 times, 10 times, whatever it is. She's eventually going to be done with this. And she has to have somebody to reach out to. And I explained to the deputies that you are part of that process, that along with social workers and along with Zoe and other community-based organizations, you're part of that process that allows her, that when she hits that rock bottom, whatever it is, and God, most of the time it happens to be when she's in the ICU, but still it could be any other time, that she has to reach out to somebody, and that is, and you were part of that component to do that. So I explained to the deputies that don't worry about her emotional reaction to you, because a lot of that is just projection. It's just anger and obstinance and attitude and oppositional defiance. She throws out all that stuff to get people to walk away. She wants people to walk away, and only the ones like Esther and Zoe and Saving Innocence and organizations like that, those people will not walk away. They will take all that abuse on the chin, verbal abuse on the chin, and say, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stick around, because in a year or 3 years or 5 years, when she reaches out and says, I'm done, they will be there. And she needs that. She just doesn't realize that now. But I don't expect the deputies or the officers to be that guy, especially the ones in uniform. I don't expect them to be that guy. What I want them to do is get the evidence, because the victim is going to do this throughout the course of the investigation. She's going to do this. She's going to be cool, then not cool, cool, then not cool. She's going to go through a whole bunch of stuff, but that evidence can sit in that evidence locker in our station for a year, 2 years, 5 years. There it'll sit. And then anytime we need, depending on within the statute of limitations, we can dust off that evidence and present it. But we can't present it if we don't have it. So that's what I tell the deputies and the officers, is your job is to get the evidence. The victim, just make sure she gets into the right hands. If you can talk to her and you can get some corpus of a crime and you can just get some bare bones, basic information from the victim, do so. Please do so. But get evidence. Get the evidence, because when this victim in 5 years says, I'm good to go, I want to testify, we go back and there's no evidence, we have no case. And we can't do a case if it's a one-on-one with no evidence. That's called lack of corroboration. We don't have it.
You touched on it a little bit in regards to some of the violence that's involved in this. There is a movement to not punish, and the traffickers even. I've been in meetings and in conversations to even, decarcerate and more rehabilitative for traffickers. And if you could just touch a little bit on just the violence, we've seen it ourselves, how violent and what the victims and the families suffer in terms of what is being done to them, even by the buyers sometimes, but especially with the traffickers, and how they do use violence and control to get them to do whatever they want and to threaten them. If you could just touch a little bit on how horrible this crime is, and what you've seen in terms of what you're able to describe, that this is a violent crime, that punishment is needed, and that there should be consequences for those who commit crimes like this.
Well, first of all, and I can't believe it just happened in maybe a year or two ago, but they finally made human trafficking a serious felony. Up until then, it wasn't a serious felony. I don't know what California thinks about in regards to that, but they just recently made it a serious felony.
Yes.
You need force, fraud, or coercion to prove human trafficking unless the victim's a minor. But force, fraud, or coercion, overwhelmingly, force is what we end up using to prove human trafficking as to adults. So force is, or at least threats of force, are a core component of this. We've seldom put on a human trafficking case, even with a minor victim, where there was no force. There is almost always some force, either threatened or applied. I can think of very few cases, very few. Seldom do we have, I don't think we've ever put on a case of human trafficking by just coercion, like, or just fraud. Okay. It was almost always force, either applied or insinuated. So force is necessary. And what I've seen is usually it's a combination of it. The guerrilla pimps or pimps that rule strictly by force, that's a little tougher for them because that doesn't tend to engender loyalty when you're beating somebody constantly. Most of the time, your girl is not gonna, it will probably snitch on you if you're beating her up all the time. Usually, it's a combination. It's a combination of a little force, implied force, and the honeymoon or the boyfriend angle where they pour on love bombing and all that kind of stuff. So all three, it's all manipulation, but force, either threats or actual force, is always present. But there's also love bombing too. But very few times have I seen just like a girl just doing this because she loves her man, and he's never threatened her, never put her hand trapped her, never put his hands on her, and never even threatened to. There was almost always some force either applied or threatened.
You know, that brings me to another question that I feel like a lot of people are asking right now with the P. Diddy case. I mean, without commenting on that particular case, because he obviously was found not guilty of human trafficking, but guilty of prostitution. And I know the big thing that entire time the trial was going on was, will they prove force, fraud, or coercion in regards to human trafficking of the two women who identified themselves as his girlfriends, but also victims of human trafficking, and he ended up being found not guilty. Can you just comment on why it is so hard to prove the coercion aspect if there isn't clear force involved to human trafficking? Because in this case, there were a lot of texts and evidence where the girls were saying that they were willing to comply, but then at other times they said that, you know, they were forced to. If you could just touch a little bit on that coercion aspect. Like you said, it's easier to prove that case of the force where there's clear evidence of that. But I think a lot of agencies and victims and survivors have spoken out saying, you know, this is what they're facing on the day-to-day basis, where victims are not being believed that they were victims because they were coerced into it. If you could just comment a little bit on that.
Yeah, that's tough. It's a theory called coercive control, and this is present in cults too. It's not just related to human trafficking. It's also present in cult-like activities as well. When you become an adult in the United States, you have a certain amount of agency, and you can make decisions for yourself. My argument is that when these adults are between 18 and 22 years old, they're TAY or transitional age youth. And I certainly instructed my deputies to stick on that case because for the coercive kind of control, because even though she's got the legal distinction of being an adult in her mind, or she's still working with a teenager's mind. But I think in the P. Diddy case, I don't know how many 18 to 22-year-olds there were. But when they're talking about 22 and above, that's literally a grown adult woman. So that's really, really tough to try to prove coercion, because you are allowed to make decisions, and you are allowed to have certain agency to make bad decisions in your life. And juries really don't take kindly to prosecutors trying to allege a crime for what could be perceived as a bad decision. Or, I mean, that's why when it comes to coercive control, and that's when they say force, fraud, or coercion is like, where, I mean, I suppose it's possible. If we had like maybe a 3-victim case and 2 victims had force and maybe one was coercion only, maybe we could get a DA to, to do something with that. But if it's just coercion, it's just a tough sell to juries. I don't know. I don't know what the solution to that is because of the way the laws are constructed in the United States. It's tough. You'd have to have some substantial evidence, electronic evidence, because obviously the suspect's going to deny everything. She's definitely going to have to testify to that. But and she's going to testify to her feelings on that, which I think in this Diddy case or whatever, they did testify. But even with public testimony, it's tough. It's tough. So it is available. I mean, and it is legal to go with a prosecution on just coercion only. But it's the tougher road to travel.
Right. I think, yeah.
But Esther, let me say that I don't want any victims to be turned away about this. Right. Not at all. Like, coercion is legit. Like, if my comments are only to the jury at the very end of this journey in a criminal case. Okay, up front during the investigation, coercion, good to go.
Right,
it's good to go.
And that's what we've seen. I mean, we've seen our law enforcement partners working so hard to build a case. And like you said, sometimes the DA doesn't take the case because they don't think that they can prove there's enough evidence to prove something in court. And so there are so many elements that you're touching on it's complicated. And there's so many elements to build the case, to prosecute the case. And that's the thing that I think a lot of times the public doesn't see or understand, because it seems sometimes like an open and shut situation, because clearly this person is harming a victim or harming somebody. Thank you so much for just your insight and all of your dedication. Your work and training and experience and expertise really has helped better this work and exponentially even just impacting survivors and helping organizations like ours figure out long-term solutions. If you can just share, what are you doing now? What is somebody who's done this kind of work and goes into retirement? What are you doing now?
Well, I can't sit still. So in all the retirement seminars I went to prior to retirement told me don't sit still because you'll end up divorced or you'll end up passed away. I've been going 100 miles an hour for quite a few years. To go from 100 to 0 is tough. So to go from 100 to like 50 or 75 is better. So I'm the director of investigations for an organization called Special Operations Finding Kids. And really this stems from my work in human trafficking, more because I used to fangirl over Zoe and over Saving Innocence and the aftercare and the victim support part of it. But I know that I couldn't personally do it because it's not in my makeup, but I used to love watching you guys work. So in this organization, there's an aftercare part. It's run by Michelle Guyman, who we all know from LA County Probation. And she brought me in to run the investigations part of it. But the reason I like the investigations part of it is because one thing with all these CSEC victims is that before they started engaging in that type of activity, before the pimp even got to them, they exhibited certain things. They were running away from home. They were truant from school. They're hanging out with friends that weren't so great, and they were probably experimenting with drugs or whatever. But it's that truant from school and running away piece that I thought, man, if we get to these kids, and that's what this organization is all about, is trying to get to these kids when they're just running away, when that's all that's happening. And then we can get to them, get them found quickly, because law enforcement just doesn't have the resources to go out and find missing kids, voluntary missing kids. But like going out and actually doing door knocks and going out trying to find them, they just don't have the resources to do it. So we can do that kind of work, find this kid quickly, get them back and get them talking to our aftercare program, just get them talking to somebody, which Michelle has a whole bunch of therapists and coaches and stuff that she manages, and get this kid and get the parents talking to somebody. That's why I like this piece, because in human trafficking, you're dealing with so much trauma. It's just so much. So the opportunity to get upstream before that trauma happens and prevent it, that's what I love. So that's what I'm here. And then in addition, I'm still on the sheriff's department as a part-time child abuse detective. So they give me some cases every once in a while to follow up on. So I got 2 jobs, and my wife still is not totally happy with that. But either that or I'd be in her face every day just saying, where are we going? What are we doing? Where are we going? What are we doing? I would just say it every day in her face, and she would tell me to go find a job. So
That's incredible. Thank you so much for
that's what I'm up to.
for all you do. And it's just like what you said. I love what Finding Kids is doing, because it's that prevention aspect, getting to them before it escalates into becoming a victim of trafficking. So I love that. And we honor you. We honor the task force and all the incredible work that you and they do. And just thank you for your partnership and just being such an incredible, leader in this fight. So thank you so much for your time today and just educating all of our listeners about this horrible problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you for spending your hour with us today and for your support of our mission to reach every person and rescue every child. As we've said before, in 2025, our goal is to mobilize 10,000 people in this fight to help end child trafficking and raise $2 million to sustain our programs. So join 10 to End, giving $10 a month to help us end child trafficking. You can visit endchildtrafficking.org to visit that campaign. Thank you.